Hi, I'm Nigel. This is my business. I've owned it for 15 years and decided it's time to retire and move on and do something different in life. I've had these machines, I've been collecting them. I started out with one CNC and I've got 7, 8 of them in here now. And it's time for them to find a new home. I've always taken care of them, I kept them clean, did regular maintenance on them, greased them, oiled them. They're all in good shape, and I think anyone that buys one of them will be happy with it. Position screen, tool offsets, current commands, no alarms, parameters, your settings, help page. It's all pretty standard on a Haas. They're all the same. A few little minor changes over the years, but I bought this thing used in about 2002, 2003. I think it's a 1999, and haven't had any problems with it since. I mean, it's pretty standard Haas machine. It's been taken care of. I kept it clean since I bought it. It was clean when I got it. No major problems, and I think you can tell by looking at it, it's in good condition. It's a spindle. That's 1,000 RPM. Let's run it up. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 10,000 RPM. That's as fast as it goes. I don't think I've ever run it at 10,000 RPM. I usually run it 8. Anything else? That's it. Let me run I'll start a program. This is just a warm-up program. It just feeds it back and forth to warm the table up, and usually do that before you start cutting anything. This is the VF3. It's running 750 RPM now. Let's go 1,500. It's going up in increments of 750. Top speed is 7,500. That's it. Again, I never ran this thing. Never ran it much over 5,000. I don't like to run these things at their maximum RPM. It's probably the second time in 30 years it's been over 5,000, 6,000 RPM. All right, we'll do a tool change. Let me just stick another tool in there. All right, so this is a VF3 that the previous owners bought brand new in 1994. And I'm the only person who's ever run it for whatever, 28 years, something like that. So I took care of it, I kept it clean, and no problems with this, just minor things over the years, maintenance, and I got a good guy for fixing these machines that he's always come out here and taken care of them when I needed it. I run the same warm-up program in that one that we did before. Same thing, just a warm-up program, moves back and forth in a kind of an X pattern just to warm the ball screws up a little before you start working on it. It's in good condition for its age. I'd say probably works every bit as good as it did the day we got it. I don't notice any difference. It's still accurate. No noises in the ball screws, and no noise in the spindle. Both this and the VF1 have a low gear, which is, I guess it gives it extra torque, more power at low RPMs for heavy cutters. I wouldn't have used that very often. Most of what I'm using is small, light cutters in there. The VM3, when we get to that, does not have the low gear. It's only got the high speed spindle and the higher gear. This is the VM3, which is a dedicated mold making machine according to Haas. It's really just basically a VF3 with a few features that a mold maker might use. All right, so this one will go all the way down to 0. The other machines only have a 10% as the lowest. All right, so 1200, 24. 12,000 RPM. Tool change. This one's got the side mount tool changer rather than the carousel. Same warm-up program. It's got a 1000 PSI through spindle coolant on it, which is great for drilling deep holes. I got to keep the door closed because the water will shoot all over otherwise. That's 1000 PSI coming through there, and if you have drills with coolant holes through them, it'll shoot the coolant down to the bottom of the drill, and you can drill without pulling the drill out of the hole all the time. It's a great feature. I mean, it was an option when I bought it, but it was worth every penny of it. This unit back here, that's the through spindle coolant pump. So, it's got a 24 tool carousel tool changer on it. The other two machines both have floppy drives. This one's got a floppy drive. I think it's got a USB thing that I've never used. I've got it hooked up, actually I got all three of them hooked up to Ethernet, so I can send the programs directly from the computer. The two other ones, the VF1 and the VF3, don't have a direct Ethernet connection. They've got a RS-232, but you can adapt that to send the programs right to the machines. Electrical discharge machining. It takes electricity, and you take an electrode and you cut the shape of whatever you want to make on the electrode. It can be square. I mean, you can get some fine details in there. It's easy to cut rather than cutting these deep pockets in steel. So you put the shape on there, you put it in here. All three of these EDM machines have a row of tooling. The big one in the back is different. It's 3R tooling. So you put these tool holders in there, and you put your piece of steel in there. So now it's touching the electrode off the top of the piece of steel, setting 0 for the height. So you got to fill the tank up with oil because that flushes the dirt out between the electrode and the steel. So you got to wait for the oil to come up to the level of the block. So the level of the oil is set over here. You just want it a little bit higher than the top of the block. I don't know if you can see it in there. See the white sparks? As the bubbles get out of the way. So the machine's telling it how deep to go. I think it's burning 10 thousandths deep or something. Then it's going to move over and burn another location. This is a Mondo 20. I think it's a 1999. I bought it used. It was in a mold shop up in Wakanda or something. It had hardly ever been used. It was like brand new when I bought it. So that's the Mondo 20. It's got all the manuals to it sitting in the back there. There's a keyboard. You need an old-fashioned PS2 keyboard, I think it is, in order to reboot it if the software ever needs to be reloaded, which I have all the discs for it. So I've always hung on to those old antique keyboards just in case. I got one for each of the AGI machines. You can still get support from, I mean, it's not AGI anymore. It was bought by Charmy, and then it was bought by George Fisher now. There's still a couple of guys who used to work for AGI in the service department there. Got any questions, they'll talk you through this stuff. All right, this is a Mondo 30, I think 1996. It was the first CNC EDM we bought. It's a little bit bigger than the Mondo 20. I'm not exactly sure the travels. I think you got that all documented. I'll show you, it's got a 5-position tool changer. The Mondo 20 has a 4-position tool changer. They both work. I don't use the tool changers that often, but they're all functional. So let's see it burn. It's not a very aggressive EDM program, but whatever was in there from the last job I did. Again, a row of tooling on this machine also. The EDM oil will come with the machine. I think I've got enough barrels to pump it all out and into drums. If not, if somebody wants the oil, they're going to have to bring me a barrel. Well, I'm going to have to get rid of it somehow. But it has a fire suppression system on it. This is the fire suppression system back on this side, that tank. Alright, so that's about it for the Mondo 30. Again, the manuals are there, the keyboard's there for rebooting the machine. I have the discs for it. This is a Charmy Roboform 44. It was built in a 2003 model. I thought it was a 2004, but it says 2003 on the cabinet. I bought this machine because I needed the C-axis. Right, the C-axis is what rotates the electrode, so it can be positioned anywhere around 360 degrees. It can turn as you're EDMing, cut threads that way. I did a job once cutting a spiral as it went up and down, and then cut a spiral into a piece of steel. We'll go ahead and run a program with it. So it's going into the start position now. It's got to rewind the C-axis back to 0. Six-position tool changer on this. It works fine. If you're going to run it overnight, you would want to set up the tool changer, and then it'll just keep going all night. But I didn't. My burns weren't that long, so there's a little more aggressive program in this one. Again, whatever was in the machine from the last job I did. Drain the tank and get a picture of it without the oil in it. All the EDMs have magnetic chucks. I don't know what this one's, probably 10 by 20. I think the Mondo 30's I don't know, 6 by 20, and then probably a 6 by 12 in the Mondo 20. This is a Makino SNC 64. It's got a 15,000 RPM spindle. Move it around by hand. There's X. There's Y. This one, the table moves up and down rather than the head moving up and down. That's about as high as it'll come. It's got a dust collector back there. The dust collector comes with the machine. I mean, these are basically dedicated graphite machines. That's what I bought it for, but I never really set it up that way. It's an Ona PD 4.60 EO. I think the tank size is 37 by 68 by about 25 inches deep. It'll hold 9,000 pounds is roughly what the table weight is in there. Turn it on. I can move this machine around, but I can't fill it with oil and burn right now. We had it in a separate facility in Franklin Park where it was working fine, but for some reason when we moved it here, the voltage is a little different. I just moved it here in November. I was going to set it up. I had one job to burn in it, and it just wasn't worth the effort of trying to set up all the transformers to get the voltage correct. I guarantee it works. It's just I can't make it work right now here. I can jog it, I can do everything with it. I can't fill the tank to get the oil in there. So that's the oil tank back there, which is a monstrosity in itself. There's about 350 gallons of oil in there. The oil is being sold separately. I mean, I imagine the person who buys the machine is going to buy the oil. I got to pump all the oil out in the next couple of days, and I got the tanks outside to fill it up. All right, so everything, like I said, everything works fine on the machine. I just can't burn with it right now because the voltage difference. It trips some breakers on the pumps because it notices the voltage isn't correct. So this is a bridge type with, call it a bridge because it goes all the way across, rather than the ram types, which is the other ones. 3R tooling in this. I do have some 3R tooling that's listed in some of the other lots. This also has a C-axis which rotates the tools. That's about it. I mean, we bought this thing 3 years ago from a place in Indiana. It's worked fine. It's just we haven't used it very often. I think we burned 3 jobs in it, and that was it. Really didn't need it. We had to have it at the time because we needed an EDM machine, but we didn't use it to as much as we expected to. This is an Okamoto 124N. It's got a 12 by 24 magnetic chuck. That's about as big of a piece as you can grind. You can go a little bit longer on the ends, but 12 by 24 is usually about it. Let me get it going here. So it's got automatic traverse on it, automatic down feed. It's a great machine. It almost works as good as the day we bought it, which is 1984. It's a great machine. Okamotos it's the name for this kind of grinder. I mean, if you want to buy a good grinder, you buy an Okamoto. There's nothing better. Got an over-the-wheel dresser. You can sharpen the wheel without stopping the grinder. Okamoto Linear 612. It's a good solid grinder. It's a little better than the Harrigs. Spindle's nice and quiet. It's got a Mitutoyo digital readout on it. A Walker magnetic chuck. This is just the backstop for it that we had taken off. I threw it back on there. Everything works nice and smooth. It's a really good solid machine. Same thing as the big grinder, Okamoto. One of the best. Just your standard Harrig grinder. So this is a 6x18 inch Walker magnetic chuck. The only difference between this and the other two Harrigs is they're a little smaller. They're 6x12s. Spindle's nice and quiet. All right, this is just another Harrig 612. 6x12 inch magnetic Walker magnetic chuck on it. Same thing over here. Both of these two are pretty much the same machine, probably a few years different. They were here when I got here in 1984, so I would guess they're mid-70s, late 70s, something like that.